Now let's begin. The morning sun cut through the kitchen window as Dominic Haynes watched his daughter stuff the last of her clothes into an already overpacked duffel bag. Amber, 12 years old with her mother's sharp eyes and his stubborn streak, was talking rapid-fire about the activities at Pine Ridge Summer Camp. "Dad, they have this advanced photography workshop, and the instructor worked for National Geographic. Can you believe it?" She looked up at him with that familiar gleam of curiosity that always reminded him of himself at her age. Dominic smiled, sipping his coffee. At 42, he'd traded the adrenaline of investigative journalism for the slightly more stable world of documentary filmmaking. But that old instinct, the one that made him look deeper, question everything, never really left. It had cost him, though. 3 years ago, he'd burned out after a particularly brutal investigation into political corruption. The threats, the legal battles, the weight of it all had nearly destroyed him. Maggie, his wife of 15 years, had been the one to pull him back. "You're sure about this?" Maggie asked, entering the kitchen in her scrubs. She worked the early shift at the hospital 3 days a week. 2 weeks is a long time. "Mom, I'm 12, not 5, Amber said, rolling her eyes but hugging her mother anyway. Dominic had researched Pine Ridge thoroughly. The camp had stellar reviews, and the director, Leonard Wall, had an impressive background in youth education. Everything checked out. Maybe too perfectly, a small voice whispered, but he pushed it aside. He couldn't live his life looking for conspiracies in every shadow. The drive to the camp took 2 hours north into the mountains. Amber spent most of it with headphones on, occasionally pointing out interesting buildings or landscapes for potential documentary footage. Dominic had taught her to see the world through a lens, to notice the stories hiding in plain sight. Pine Ridge sat nestled in a valley surrounded by dense forest. The main building was a renovated lodge, and cabins dotted the property. Kids were everywhere, laughing, hauling luggage, hugging parents goodbye. It looked exactly like what it was supposed to be. Leonard Wall met them at registration. He was in his late 40s, with graying hair and a practiced smile that never quite reached his eyes. Dominic noticed the way Wall's handshake lingered a fraction too long, the way his gaze assessed rather than welcomed. "Mr. Haynes, wonderful to meet you. And this must be Amber." Wall's attention shifted to his daughter. "We have quite a program lined up. I think you'll find it very enlightening." Something in the word choice struck Dominic as odd, but Amber was already being swept away by a young counselor named Jen Hoover, who seemed genuinely warm and excited. He watched his daughter disappear into the crowd of kids, her duffel bag bouncing against her back. "She'll be in excellent hands," Wall said, still standing too close. "We take great care with all our campers, especially the children of notable parents." Dominic felt the hair on his neck prickle. "I'm just a documentary filmmaker." "Of course, but you used to be more than that, didn't you?" Dominic Haynes, the journalist who exposed the Riverside corruption scandal. 15 years ago, if I remember correctly. The comment landed like a punch. Dominic kept his face neutral. "That was a long time ago." "Indeed. Well, enjoy your 2 weeks of freedom, Mr. Haynes. We'll take good care of your daughter." The drive home felt longer than it should have. Dominic couldn't shake the conversation, the way Wall had brought up Riverside. That investigation had been his biggest story and his most dangerous. A network of politicians, businessmen, and judges all feeding at the public trough. When Dominic exposed it, the fallout was spectacular. Careers ended. People went to prison. One man, a state senator named Edward Wall, had taken his own life rather than face prosecution. Wall, the same last name as the camp director. Dominic pulled over at a rest stop and did something he'd sworn he wouldn't do. He started digging. His old laptop was still in the trunk, a habit from his journalism days. He fired it up and ran searches. 20 minutes later, he had his answer. Leonard Wall was Edward Wall's son. His phone rang before he could process the implications. "The camp's number." "Mr. Haynes?" A woman's voice, strained and urgent. "This is Patsy Hagan, assistant director at Pine Ridge. You need to come back immediately. There's been an incident with Amber." His blood went cold. "What happened? Is she hurt?" "Please just come. And Mr. Haynes, don't bring your wife. Come alone. We have police here. Director Wall wants to speak with you first." The line went dead. Dominic made the 2-hour drive in 90 minutes, his mind racing through possibilities, each worse than the last. The moment he saw the camp entrance, his worst fears seemed confirmed. 3 ambulances were parked near the main lodge, their lights silent but ominous. Police cars created a perimeter. Parents were being held at the gate. A uniformed officer approached his car. "Sir, I need you to. I'm Dominic Haynes. My daughter." "Mr. Haynes, yes. Come with me, please." Timothy Kane, according to his badge, was in his 50s with the weathered look of a career cop. He led Dominic through the chaos with a firm hand on his shoulder, past frantic parents and crying children being loaded into vehicles. Leonard Wall stood near the lodge entrance, his earlier composure cracked. There was a cut above his eyebrow, and his shirt was torn. When he saw Dominic, something flickered across his face. Not concern, but calculation. "Mr. Haynes, thank God you're here," Wall said, but his tone was all wrong. "Before you see Amber, you need to understand what happened." "Where is she?" Dominic demanded. Officer Kane intervened. "Your daughter is safe, Mr. Haynes. She's being examined by paramedics, but she's not seriously injured. However, there's been a serious incident." "What happened?" Kane and Wall exchanged glances. Finally, Kane spoke. 3 hours ago, your daughter broke into Director Wall's private office. When confronted by staff, she assaulted 2 counselors and Director Wall himself. She was found in possession of stolen property and was making wild accusations about the camp. Dominic stared at them. "That's impossible. Amber wouldn't." "I understand this is difficult," Wall interrupted, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "But your daughter has caused significant damage. She's claiming we're running some sort of illegal operation, that we've been, and I apologize for the language, grooming and exploiting children. Obviously, these are the delusions of a troubled young girl." Every word was calculated, Dominic realized. Wall was building a narrative, setting up a story where Amber was unstable, where her accusations could be dismissed. In the presence of police, the formal setting, it was all designed to intimidate him into accepting this version of events. But they'd made a mistake. They'd assumed he'd be too scared, too concerned with his daughter's immediate welfare to think clearly. "I want to see her. Now." Kane nodded. "Of course. But Mr. Haynes, I need to inform you that charges may be filed. The camp has the right. I'm aware of their rights. Where's my daughter?" They led him to an ambulance where Amber sat wrapped in a blanket. Her face was pale, but her eyes were blazing with that same intensity he'd seen in the mirror during his investigative days. She had a bruised cheek and scraped knuckles. The moment she saw him, she stood. "Dad, listen to me. I found something." "There. Sweetheart, let's get you checked out first," he said calmly, but he squeezed her hand in a pattern they'd developed years ago. 3 short squeezes, I believe you. 2 long, play along. She squeezed back. 1 long, understood. The paramedic confirmed she had no serious injuries. Minor contusions, defensive wounds on her hands. As they worked, Dominic studied the scene with the eye of someone who'd spent 2 decades uncovering lies. The ambulances were excessive for minor injuries. The police presence was theatrical. Several counselors were watching from a distance, but one, Patsy Hagen, the woman who'd called him, kept glancing at Wall nervously. And Wall himself couldn't stop touching his phone, like he was expecting a call. "Mr. Haynes," Wall approached again, his voice lower now. "I think we need to have a private conversation about your daughter's behavior and about why she might have targeted this camp specifically." There it was. The threat barely veiled. Wall knew that Dominic had figured out who he was. "I think that's an excellent idea," Dominic said evenly. "But first, I'm taking my daughter home. Unless Officer Kane is charging her with something?" Kane looked uncomfortable. "Not at this time. But the camp may press charges later. Then we're leaving. Amber, get your things. They're already packed," Jen Hoover said quietly, appearing with Amber's duffel bag. She handed it to Dominic, and for just a moment, her eyes met his. There was a message there: be careful. Dominic waited until they were 20 miles from the camp before he pulled over at a diner. Amber had been silent the whole drive, her jaw clenched in a way that reminded him painfully of Maggie when she was angry. Inside the diner, in a corner booth far from other patrons, Dominic finally spoke. "Tell me everything. Don't leave anything out." Amber's words came out in a rush. "Dad, I know this sounds crazy, but that camp isn't what it seems. I was exploring during free time. You know how I like to take pictures of architecture, and I found this building behind the tree line. It looked old, like maybe an original structure they'd renovated. The door was unlocked." She paused, taking a shaky breath. Inside, there was equipment. Professional cameras, recording gear, editing stations. And files, Dad. Physical files with names and photos of kids. Not just current campers, kids from previous years going back a decade. Each file had detailed notes about their families, their parents' jobs, their wealth, their connections. Dominic felt his investigative instincts kick into high gear. What else? Videos. I only watched a few seconds before I heard someone coming, but it was footage of kids in their cabins, in the showers, changing rooms. Hidden cameras everywhere. And there were notes about leveraging and exploitation potential and, Dad, they're creating blackmail material. They're recording these kids in compromising situations and selling the information to, I don't know who. But it's organized. Professional. Did you take anything? Amber reached into her jacket and pulled out a USB drive. I grabbed this from the computer. It was labeled active assets. I don't know what's on it, but I thought it might be evidence. Dominic stared at his daughter with a mixture of pride and terror. They caught you. Patsy Hagen found me. She started yelling about how I'd ruined everything, how I didn't understand what I'd done. Then Wall showed up with 2 other counselors. They tried to take the drive, but She looked at her bruised knuckles. I fought back. I've been taking those self-defense classes Mom signed me up for. It actually worked. How did you get away? Jen Hoover. She came in and started screaming about an emergency with another camper. In the confusion, I ran. I hid in the woods for almost an hour before they found me. By then, someone had called the police, probably to control the narrative. Wall tried to make it look like I was the criminal, like I was some disturbed kid making up stories. Dominic's mind was racing. The setup was sophisticated. By having police present, Wall had created official documentation of Amber's erratic behavior. If she or Dominic went public with accusations, Wall could point to the police report, make her seem unstable. It was exactly the kind of preemptive strike Dominic himself had seen corruption targets use. There's more, Amber said quietly. When I was hiding, I heard Wall on the phone. He said something about the Haynes girl and how this was personal now. Dad, I think he knows who you are. I think this isn't just about the camp. I think it's about you. Dominic felt the pieces clicking into place. 15 years ago, he destroyed Edward Wall's life. Now the son had orchestrated a trap using the thing Dominic loved most, his daughter. But they'd underestimated Amber, and they'd underestimated him. We need to go to the police, Amber said. Show them what's on this drive. No. What? Dad, these people are. I know what they are, sweetheart. But think about it. Wall already has the local police on his side. He's had years to build relationships, make donations, create goodwill. If we go to them now with accusations, they'll see a desperate father trying to protect his daughter from assault charges. We need more than what's on that drive. We need everything. Amber's eyes widened. You're going to investigate them. We're going to investigate them, Dominic corrected. You're the one who found the evidence. You're the one who knew something was wrong. I'm not cutting you out of this, but we need to be smart. These people are dangerous, and they've been planning this for a long time. He pulled out his phone and called Bruce Landry, an old colleague from his journalism days who now worked freelance investigative projects. Bruce answered on the second ring. Dom? Christ, I haven't heard from you in 2 years. I need your help. And Bruce? It's bad. Really bad. They didn't go home. Dominic called Maggie from a burner phone he picked up at a gas station, telling her to pack essentials and meet them at a hotel in a city 2 hours south. He kept the explanation vague. There'd been an incident at camp. They needed to lay low for a few days. He'd explain everything in person. Maggie's nursing background made her pragmatic in a crisis. She didn't ask unnecessary questions over the phone, just confirmed she'd be there. The hotel room became a command center. Bruce arrived with laptops and equipment, taking one look at Amber's bruised face before pulling Dominic aside. What have you gotten into? Bruce asked quietly. Dominic explained everything. Wall's identity, the camp operation, Amber's discovery. Bruce's expression grew darker with each detail. This is bigger than revenge, Bruce said finally. If they're creating blackmail material on wealthy kids, someone's buying it. This is organized crime level stuff. Can you crack the USB? Give me an hour. While Bruce worked, Dominic sat with Maggie and Amber, finally telling his wife everything. Maggie's face went through several expressions, shock, anger, fear, before settling into determined focus. So what's the plan? She asked. Her calm pragmatism was one of the reasons he'd fallen in love with her. We exposed them. Completely. But we do it right. No rush journalism, no half-stories. We document everything, find all their connections, and we bring them down so hard they never see daylight again. And if they come after us? Dominic met her eyes. Then they'll discover that trying to hurt my family was the worst mistake they ever made. Bruce called them over to his laptop. You need to see this. The USB drive contained detailed files on over 200 children from the past decade. Each file included family background and net worth, secret recordings from hidden cameras, psychological profiles designed to identify vulnerabilities, notes on leverage potential, basically, which kids could be compromised most easily, client requests, specific information buyers wanted about specific children. Dad, Amber said, her voice shaking. Some of these kids, they're my age. Younger. And these clients, who are they? Bruce pulled up a folder. This is the buyer list. It's encrypted, but not well. These people got arrogant. His fingers flew over the keyboard. We've got names here. Wealthy individuals, corporate executives, political operatives. They're buying information for everything from corporate espionage, targeting executives' kids, to political leverage. And some. He didn't finish, but he didn't need to. Some of the buyers had darker purposes. This is a federal crime, Maggie said. Multiple federal crimes. We take this to the FBI. Not yet, Dominic said. He was thinking 3 steps ahead now, the old investigative rhythm returning. If we go to the FBI now, Wall and his people will lawyer up, destroy evidence, and disappear. The buyers will vanish. We'll get some arrests, maybe, but the operation will just move somewhere else under new names. So what do you suggest? We make them think they've won. Wall expects me to either go to the police, where he has influence, or run scared. Instead, we play the long game. We investigate them the way I used to investigate corruption. We find every piece of evidence, every connection, every crime. And then we don't just expose them. We destroy them so completely that there's no recovery. Bruce grinned. You want to run a full investigation. Infiltration, documentation, the works. Exactly, Dad, Amber interjected. These people try to hurt me. They're hurting other kids. How can we just wait? Dominic knelt in front of his daughter. I know it's hard, but if we move too fast, some of them escape. They hurt more kids at another camp, another place. If we do this right, we end this completely. No one else gets hurt. Amber looked at the files on the screen, at the faces of kids who had no idea they'd been violated. Finally, she nodded. Okay, but I want to help. This happened because of me. I should. This happened because of me. Dominic interrupted gently. 15 years ago, I exposed Wall's father. This is his revenge. But you were brave enough and smart enough to find the truth. Now we use that truth. Maggie squeezed his shoulder. So what's the first step? We need to understand the full operation. Bruce and I will work the investigation. Maggie, you and Amber need to stay somewhere safe. These people. Absolutely not, Maggie said firmly. We're not hiding while you put yourself at risk. We're a family. We do this together. Dominic looked at his wife, then his daughter, seeing the same determined expression on both faces. He realized they were right. The old Dominic, the one who'd burned out, had tried to carry everything alone. This time would be different. All right, he said. Then we start by finding out everything about Leonard Wall. His finances, his associates, his habits. Everything. And we need to identify who at that camp can be turned. There are counselors who might not know what's happening, or might be coerced into participating. Jen Hoover, Amber said immediately. She helped me escape. And she looked scared when she gave you my bag, like she wanted to say something but couldn't. Good. She's our first potential ally. Dominic turned to Bruce. Can you create a secure way for someone to contact us anonymously? Consider it done. They worked through the night, building dossiers and mapping connections. By dawn, they had a clearer picture. Leonard Wall had been running Pine Ridge for 12 years, slowly building his operation. He had 3 key partners, Patsy Hagen, assistant director, Dick Jones, camp counselor and tech specialist, and someone identified only as the broker who connected buyers with available intelligence. The operation was sophisticated. Cameras were disguised as smoke detectors, air vents, and decorative fixtures. The building Amber found was just the processing center. The actual surveillance hub was likely somewhere else on the property. Here's what I don't understand, Bruce said around 6 a.m., exhausted. Why did Wall set up this whole thing just to get revenge on you? This operation was running for years before Amber showed up. Dominic had been thinking the same thing. Maybe the camp was always his business, and targeting Amber was just an added bonus. Or maybe his phone rang. Unknown number. Don't answer it, Maggie said immediately. But Dominic's instinct told him otherwise. He put it on speaker. Mr. Haynes. Leonard Wall's voice was smooth, confident. I assume by now you've had time to process yesterday's events. What do you want, Wall? Direct. Good. I appreciate that. I want us to have a conversation, father to father. Your daughter made some serious accusations yesterday. Assault charges are being filed today, but I'm willing to make this all go away. All you have to do is forget what she thinks she saw. And why would I do that? Because 15 years ago, you destroyed my father. You exposed his mistakes, yes, but you did it without mercy. You didn't just report the facts, you crucified him. You made him a monster in the public eye. He couldn't live with the shame, Mr. Haynes. He killed himself because of you. Your father was corrupt. He stole from taxpayers, took bribes. He was a man who made mistakes. Wall's composure cracked, and you turned him into a villain for your career. Well, now you understand what it's like to watch someone you love be accused, to see them portrayed as dangerous. Your daughter assaulted 3 people yesterday. She's facing serious charges. Unless I what? Unless you understand that we're even now. Your daughter is safe. Unharmed, even. But if you push this, if you try to be a hero again, things will get much worse. For all of you. The threat was clear. Dominic looked at his family watching him, at Bruce recording every word. You think we're even? Dominic said calmly. You run a camp where you exploit children, create blackmail material, and sell it to the highest bidder. And you think staging my daughter's arrest makes us even? There was a long pause. You can't prove any of that. Can't I? Another pause, longer this time. When Wall spoke again, his voice was different. Colder. You're making a mistake, Haynes. You don't know who you're dealing with. Actually, I do. I spent my career dealing with people exactly like you. The difference is, I was just doing my job back then. This time, this is personal. Dominic hung up. That was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, Bruce said. Both, Maggie added. They know we're not backing down now. Good, Dominic said. Let them worry. Scared people make mistakes. And we're going to be there to document every single one. Over the next week, Dominic and his family became ghosts. They moved locations every 2 days, used burner phones, and communicated through encrypted channels Bruce set up. Dominic reached out to old contacts, journalists, investigators, lawyers who specialized in child exploitation cases. Each conversation was careful, revealing only what was necessary, but building a network. Bruce, meanwhile, worked his magic with the USB data, decrypting files, and tracing digital footprints. What they discovered was staggering. The operation wasn't just about blackmail, it was about power. Wall and his associates had leverage over executives, politicians, and wealthy individuals across 3 states. They'd been influencing business deals, political campaigns, even legal proceedings. This is bigger than we thought, Bruce said on day 6. The broker, I found him. His real name is Hugo Todd. He used to work in private intelligence before getting disbarred for ethics violations. He's the one who built the buyer network. Where is he? That's the interesting part. He's not hiding. He runs a consulting firm in the city, completely legitimate on the surface. He's careful, though. Everything runs through intermediaries. Dominic studied the information. Hugo Todd was the keystone. If they could flip him or expose his role, the entire operation would collapse. But Todd was smart, protected by layers of corporate structures and legal barriers. Then Amber found something. She'd been reviewing the files on the USB, her photographer's eye-catching details others missed. Dad, look at this. She pointed to a series of dates in one file. These surveillance sessions, they match up with specific events. Therapy appointments. Maggie leaned in. What are you thinking? I'm thinking they're not just creating blackmail material randomly. They're coordinating with therapists. Look, subject became distressed during simulated emergency drill. Responded as predicted. Dr. Wilkins recommends continued treatment. They're traumatizing these kids deliberately. Dominic felt sick. They're creating long-term patients. The surveillance is just part of it. They're also orchestrating psychological harm, then referring the kids to specific therapists who are in on the scheme. It's It's a complete enterprise, Bruce finished. Camp, surveillance, blackmail, therapeutic fraud. Jesus. Dr. Wilkins, Maggie said. I know that name. Bessie Wilkins. She's a prominent child psychologist. She speaks at conferences, writes books. If she's involved, then we need to prove it, Dominic said. Bruce, can you trace financial connections between the camp and her practice? Give me a day. While Bruce dug into financial records, Dominic made a risky move. He drove to the city and sat in a coffee shop across from Hugo Todd's consulting firm. For 6 hours, he watched. Old habits died hard. He still knew how to conduct surveillance, how to be invisible. At 4 p.m., Todd emerged. Late 50s, expensive suit, confident stride. He met with 3 different people over the next 2 hours at various locations. Dominic photographed each meeting, noting locations and times. These weren't casual encounters. They were business transactions. The third meeting was in a parking garage. Todd handed a briefcase to a well-dressed woman in her 40s. The exchange lasted less than 30 seconds. Dominic captured it all. Back at the hotel, Bruce ran facial recognition on the woman. Margaret McCarty. She's a political consultant. Works for several high-profile campaigns. So Todd is actively selling information right now, Dominic said. He's not worried about Amber's discovery. He thinks Wall shut it down. They think you're scared and hiding, Maggie observed. They don't realize you're building a case. Exactly. Which means we have a window. They're still operating openly. The opportunity Dominic had been waiting for came 2 days later. Jen Hoover, the counselor who'd helped Amber, reached out through the anonymous channel Bruce had created. Her message was brief. I need to talk. I can't do this anymore. They arranged a meeting at a neutral location, a public park 3 hours from the camp. Dominic went alone, with Bruce watching from a distance and Maggie ready to call authorities if something went wrong. Jen was early, sitting on a bench looking terrified. She was in her early 20s, her eyes red from crying. Thank you for coming, Dominic said gently, sitting beside her. I didn't know, she said immediately. When I took the job, I thought it was just a summer camp. I needed the money for student loans. But then I saw things, heard things. By the time I realized what was happening, I was already involved. They said if I talked, they'd make me complicit. They'd ruin my life. What can you tell me? Over the next hour, Jen provided details that filled in crucial gaps. The surveillance system was even more extensive than Amber had discovered. Every cabin, every bathroom, every private space was monitored. Dick Jones handled the technical side, installing and maintaining cameras. Patsy Hagen recruited counselors and screened them for either compliance or ignorance. There's a counselor meeting every Monday, Jen said. Wall and Hagen tell us which kids to watch, which situations to create. They frame it as observation for safety reasons, but it's targeting. They make us put kids in stressful situations, scary stories before bed, staged emergencies, conflicts with other campers. Anything to create footage of them at their worst. And the therapist referrals? Dr. Wilkins comes to the camp once a session. She evaluates kids who've shown stress responses. She always recommends continued treatment at her private practice. The parents usually agree because they're worried. I thought she was trying to help. I didn't realize. Jen's voice broke. She's making it worse. She's deliberately keeping them traumatized. Will you testify to all this? Jen looked terrified. I don't know if I can. Wall has resources. He's connected. And there's something else. She pulled out her phone, showing Dominic a text message. This came yesterday. The message was from an unknown number. We know you talked to the Haynes girl. Stay quiet, or everyone learns about your brother. What does that mean? Jen's hands shook. My younger brother. He had some legal trouble a few years ago. Nothing major, but it was expunged from his record. Wall found out somehow. He's threatening to expose it, make it look worse than it was. My brother is trying to get into law school. This would destroy him. Dominic felt rage building. This was Wall's pattern. Find vulnerabilities, exploit them, maintain control through fear. It was exactly what his father had done, just a different arena. What if I told you we have enough evidence to bring down the entire operation? Dominic said. Wall, Todd, Dr. Wilkins, all of them. But we need insider testimony to make it airtight. You can protect my brother? I can do better than that. I can make sure Wall's threats become meaningless. But I need you to trust me. Jen looked at him for a long moment. Finally, she nodded. What do you need? With Jen's cooperation, the investigation accelerated. She provided internal documents, recorded conversations, and details about the camp's operations. More importantly, she identified other counselors who might be willing to talk, people who, like her, had been manipulated into silence. Bruce cross-referenced her information with financial records he'd obtained. Dominic didn't ask how. The money trail was damning. Wall's camp funneled payments to Todd's consulting firm, which then distributed funds to various contractors, including Dr. Wilkins's practice. It was a clear pattern of organized criminal activity. But Dominic knew evidence wasn't enough. He'd learned that lesson 15 years ago with the Riverside case. You could have all the proof in the world, but if you didn't control the narrative, your targets could spin it, delay it, muddy it until public interest died. This time, he wanted something different. He wanted complete destruction. We need to turn one of the main players, he told Bruce. Wall, Hagen, Jones, or Todd. Someone high enough in the organization that their testimony unravels everything. Hagen is the weak link, Bruce suggested. She's been with Wall the longest, which means she knows the most. But according to Jen, Hagen has been getting nervous. She didn't expect the operation to get this big. Dominic considered it. Patsy Hagen had made the call demanding he return to camp without his wife. She'd been the one to find Amber in the surveillance building. She knew everything, and she was scared. How do we approach her? Amber, who'd been listening, spoke up. You don't. I do. Absolutely not, Maggie said immediately. Mom, listen. Hagen thought she had me under control. She expected me to be traumatized, scared, discredited. But I'm not. If I show up, confident and unafraid, it'll shake her. And I'm the only one who can get close without raising suspicion. Your mother's right, Dominic said. It's too dangerous. Dad, you taught me that sometimes you have to take risks for the truth. This is my risk to take. These people hurt kids my age. They tried to hurt me. I should get to help stop them. Dominic looked at his daughter, 12 years old, but with the determination of someone much older. He saw himself in her, and it scared him. But he also saw something he'd lost along the way. The absolute certainty that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the cost. If we do this, he said slowly, you follow the plan exactly. No improvisation, no heroes. And your mother and I are close by the entire time. Amber nodded. What's the plan? Over the next 3 days, they prepared. Bruce created a wire, small enough to hide, powerful enough to capture clear audio. Jen provided intelligence on Hagen's schedule and habits. And Dominic coached Amber on how to approach the conversation, what to say, how to read responses. The camp was still operational. Wall had kept it running despite the incident, confident he'd contained the situation. Parents had been told there'd been a minor disturbance, but everything was under control. Most had chosen to believe it, not wanting to disrupt their kids' summer or admit they'd made a mistake. On a Thursday afternoon, Amber walked into the Pine Ridge Camp administrative office. She was dressed simply, her bruises faded enough to hide with makeup. Jen had arranged for Hagen to be alone. Patsy Hagen looked up from her desk, her expression cycling through shock, confusion, and fear in rapid succession. Amber, what are you? You shouldn't be here. I came to talk, Amber said calmly. She'd practiced this moment a dozen times. About what happened. Your father should have called. This isn't appropriate. I need to. My dad doesn't know I'm here. Amber closed the door. I needed to understand something. Why did you do it? Hagen's facade cracked slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. The surveillance. The blackmail. Working with Dr. Wilkins. I found the files, remember? I know what you've been doing. You need to leave. Now. I've been thinking about it all week, Amber continued, sitting in the chair across from Hagen's desk. You didn't seem like a bad person when I first met you. Even when you found me in that building, you looked more scared than angry. So I'm trying to figure out, are you a victim in this too? The question landed perfectly. Hagen's shoulders sagged. You don't understand. Then help me understand. For a moment, it looked like Hagen might shut down completely. But then something shifted. Maybe it was exhaustion or guilt, or just the need to confess to someone. Whatever it was, Hagen started talking. I didn't know what it was at first, she said quietly. Leonard told me he wanted to run a camp that really understood its students. Comprehensive monitoring for safety. It made sense. But then he showed me what he was really doing. By then, I'd been involved for 2 years. He made it clear that if I left or talked, I'd be implicated. I'd go to prison. So you stayed. I stayed. And it got worse. The blackmail operation, the therapy referrals, the clients. Each year it expanded. I told Leonard it was too much, too risky. But he said we were in too deep to stop. Hagen looked directly at Amber. When I found you in that building, part of me was relieved. I thought maybe this would finally end it. But it didn't. Leonard controlled it. He made you look unstable, made your father look desperate. He's good at that, making people doubt what they know is true. Hagen paused. His father was the same way, according to Leonard. Convincing people, manipulating situations. Until your father exposed him. This whole thing is revenge. Partly. But it's also business. Leonard convinced himself that what his father did wasn't really corruption. It was just how things worked. He thinks your father destroyed his family over technicalities. So he built an operation doing essentially the same thing, but called it information brokering instead of corruption. He's blackmailing people. He prefers leveraging information for mutual benefit. Hagen's laugh was bitter. The semantics help him sleep at night, I guess. Amber leaned forward. Miss Hagen, if you helped us stop this, really stop it, you might be able to make a deal. My dad knows lawyers who handle this kind of thing. You could testify against Wall and Todd and the others. They'd kill me. Or ruin me. Same difference. They'd try. But if everything came out at once, if there was no way to hide it or spin it, they'd be too busy trying to save themselves. You'd just be one of many witnesses. Hagen studied Amber for a long moment. You're 12 years old. You shouldn't have to be this smart about this kind of evil. And kids my age shouldn't have to be victims of it. But here we are. Your father really did teach you well. Hagen opened her desk drawer and pulled out a flash drive. This is my insurance policy. I've been keeping my own records, my own copies of everything. Financial transactions, client lists, surveillance footage. If Leonard ever turned on me, I'd have evidence. But I've been too scared to use it. She held out the drive. Amber took it carefully. There's a meeting tomorrow night, Hagen said. Wall, Todd, Dr. Wilkins, and Jones. They're finalizing plans for next summer's session. They do it off-site, at a private estate Todd owns. If you wanted to document the whole organization in one place. Where? Hagen wrote down an address. I'll be there. I can make sure certain doors are unlocked, certain security measures are disabled. But Amber, if this doesn't work, if they figure out what I've done, I'm dead. It'll work, Amber said with more confidence than she felt. My dad never fails at this stuff. For your sake, I hope that's true. Dominic listened to the wire recording 3 times, his admiration for his daughter growing with each playthrough. She'd handled Hagen perfectly, showing empathy while maintaining control, giving hope while extracting information. She's good at this, Bruce said. Scary good. She gets it from her mother, Maggie said, though her voice was tight with residual fear about what could have gone wrong. The flash drive Hagen provided was a goldmine. Financial records going back 8 years, communications with clients, detailed notes on each operation. Combined with what they already had, it was enough to bury everyone involved. But Dominic wanted more than legal victory. He wanted public exposure, complete destruction of their operations and reputations. The meeting Hagen mentioned, that was the opportunity. We need to record that meeting, he told Bruce. Full audio and video. Every participant, every word. Breaking into a private estate to conduct surveillance on multiple felony conspirators? That's a new line even for you, Dom. I've already crossed every other line this week. What's one more? The estate was in the countryside, isolated and secure. Dominic scouted it over 2 days, mapping out access points and security measures. Todd had cameras and motion sensors, but they were predictable, designed to detect casual intruders, not someone with experience. Hagen provided a detailed floor plan and security codes. On the night of the meeting, she'd disable the system in the meeting room itself, claiming it was malfunctioning. That would give them a 10-minute window to plant devices. Dominic went in alone while Bruce monitored from a van a mile away. Maggie and Amber waited at the hotel, both hating being sidelined but understanding the risk. Slipping past the perimeter security was easier than expected. Todd was arrogant, assuming his isolation provided protection. Dominic made his way to the meeting room, a wood-paneled library on the 2nd floor. Using equipment Bruce provided, he planted 3 audio devices and 2 micro cameras in strategic locations. The whole operation took 8 minutes. As he prepared to leave, he heard voices approaching. The meeting was starting early. Dominic slipped into an adjoining room just as Leonard Wall, Hugo Todd, Patsy Hagen, Dick Jones, and Dr. Bessie Wilkins entered the library. Through a crack in the door, he could see and hear everything. "We have a problem," Wall said without preamble. "The Haynes situation isn't resolved." "I thought you handled it," Todd said, pouring drinks. "You had the local police on your side. Haynes hasn't filed charges or gone to the media. He's just disappeared. With his family. That's not the behavior of someone who's scared. That's the behavior of someone who's planning." "You're being paranoid," Dr. Wilkins said. She was a severe-looking woman in her 60s. "The man is a washed-up journalist protecting his troubled daughter. What can he possibly do?" He exposed a corruption network that included state senators and judges. "Don't underestimate him." Dick Jones, younger and nervous-looking, spoke up. "Should we shut down operations for a while? Move the surveillance hub?" "Absolutely not," Todd interjected. "We have clients expecting deliveries. We have a reputation to maintain. One nosy kid and her has-been father aren't going to disrupt a decade of work." "That nosy kid has evidence," Hagen said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. She took a USB drive from the processing center. "We don't know what was on it." Wall's expression darkened. "You told me she didn't take anything. I told you what you wanted to hear. But think about it, Leonard. She was in that building for several minutes before I found her. She's smart. She would have grabbed evidence." The room fell silent. Finally, Todd spoke. "Then we need to contain this permanently. Haynes needs to be convinced that pursuing this will destroy his family." "You mean threaten them?" Dr. Wilkins said. "I mean ensure compliance. We have resources. People who specialize in persuasion." "You're talking about violence," Hagen said, her voice shaking. "Against a child." "I'm talking about protecting our operation," Todd replied coldly. "We've built something significant here. We're not letting one family take it down." Wall stood abruptly. "No, we don't touch the kid. That's not who we are." "Your father would have done what was necessary," Todd said. "That's what you always said." He understood that sometimes you have to be ruthless. "My father killed himself because he couldn't handle the pressure," Wall shouted. "I'm not repeating his mistakes. We handle this legally, professionally. We have lawyers. We have connections. We make Haynes look like a conspiracy theorist." "And if that doesn't work?" Jones asked. Wall looked at each of them in turn. "Then we disappear the operation. Erase everything, scatter. We have contingency plans for this." "Running away," Todd said with disgust. "Just like your father." For a moment, Dominic thought Wall might attack Todd. The tension was palpable. Then Wall smiled coldly. "My father ran from his mistakes. I'm running with millions of dollars and a decade of leverage over powerful people. There's a difference." The meeting continued for another hour, discussing logistics and exit strategies. They debated whether to accelerate operations or shut down entirely. Dr. Wilkins revealed that she had sessions scheduled with 17 children currently under their surveillance, each one being treated for trauma that the camp had deliberately caused. Through it all, Dominic recorded everything. Every admission, every plan, every casual discussion of criminal activity. It was better than he'd hoped. They were documenting their own crimes in explicit detail. Finally, the meeting ended. Dominic waited until everyone left, then slipped out the same way he'd entered. 20 minutes later, he was back in the van with Bruce. "Tell me you got all that," Bruce said. Dominic smiled grimly. "Every single word." Building the case took 3 more days. Dominic, Bruce, and Maggie worked around the clock, organizing evidence into a comprehensive document that told the complete story: the surveillance operation, the blackmail network, the therapy fraud, the buyer lists, everything. They compiled Hagen's flash drive with financial records and correspondence, Amber's original USB with victim files, audio and video from the estate meeting, Jen Hoover's testimony and documentation, financial analysis linking all parties, surveillance footage Dominic had shot of Todd conducting transactions. It was overwhelming, damning, and irrefutable. "We need to be strategic about release," Dominic said. "If we give this to the police first, it could get buried. If we go to the media first, the legal system might claim prejudice. We need simultaneous deployment." "I have contacts at the FBI's Cybercrimes Division," Bruce said. "They handle child exploitation cases. If we present this properly, they'll launch an immediate investigation." "And I have contacts at several major news outlets," Dominic added. "People who owe me favors, who know my work. They'll break the story the moment the FBI moves." Maggie looked at the assembled evidence. "This destroys them. Completely." Wall, Todd, Wilkins, all of them. They'll spend decades in prison. Good, Amber said simply. The operation launched on a Tuesday morning. Bruce delivered copies of the evidence to the FBI's regional office, with documentation of chain of custody and source verification. Simultaneously, Dominic sent secure files to 3 major newspapers and 2 investigative journalism programs. By noon, the FBI had executed search warrants on Pine Ridge Camp, Todd's consulting firm, and Dr. Wilkins's practice. By evening, all major participants were in custody, and by the next morning, the story was on every news outlet in the country. Camp of Horrors: How a Summer Camp Became a Child Exploitation Network. The headlines were brutal. The story was too sensational, too well documented to ignore. Parents whose children had attended Pine Ridge were calling hotlines. Former campers were coming forward with stories of unexplained trauma and subsequent therapy. The buyer list was being investigated, with several prominent names already facing their own scandals. Leonard Wall was arrested at the estate where the meeting had taken place. Hugo Todd tried to flee to Mexico, but was apprehended at the airport. Dr. Bessie Wilkins was found in her office, surrounded by files she'd been attempting to shred. Patsy Hagen and Dick Jones turned themselves in, both immediately requesting plea deals in exchange for testimony. Jen Hoover was given immunity for her cooperation. She provided testimony that corroborated everything Dominic had documented. The media descended on Dominic, wanting interviews and exclusives, but he declined most requests, issuing only a simple statement. My daughter discovered evidence of criminal activity. As a father and a journalist, I had a responsibility to ensure that evidence reached the appropriate authorities. The real heroes are the children who survived this exploitation and the whistleblowers who risked everything to expose it. 3 weeks after the arrests, Dominic sat in a courtroom watching Leonard Wall's arraignment. Wall looked diminished, his earlier confidence stripped away. When he saw Dominic in the gallery, their eyes met. Wall's expression was complicated: anger, defeat, and something that might have been understanding. He mouthed something that Dominic couldn't quite catch, but the meaning was clear enough. You won. Dominic felt no triumph, only exhaustion and relief. He'd spent 15 years trying to escape the weight of investigative work, only to be pulled back in by the most personal case of his life. But this time was different. This time, he'd had his family beside him. He protected what mattered most while exposing what needed to be seen. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Dominic pushed through them, declining to comment. His lawyer, a sharp woman named in Davenport who specialized in media law, handled the statements. All charges against Amber had been dropped. Several families were filing civil suits against the camp, Todd's firm, and Dr. Wilkins's practice. The FBI was still investigating the buyer network, with additional arrests expected. Maggie and Amber waited by the car. When Dominic reached them, Amber hugged him tightly. Is it over? She asked. The criminal part? Yeah, it's over. The rest, the trials, the fallout, that'll take years. But the important part is done. You're safe. They can't hurt anyone else. What about Wall's threat? His revenge. His revenge failed. Because you were braver and smarter than he expected. And because when it mattered, we worked together instead of me trying to handle everything alone. Dominic looked at Maggie. I learned that lesson the hard way. They drove home. Their actual home. No more hotels or hiding. The house felt different, both familiar and strange after weeks away. That night, they ordered pizza and sat together in the living room, just being a family. I'm proud of you, Dominic told Amber. What you did at that camp, finding the evidence, fighting back, keeping your head clear, that took real courage. I was scared the whole time, Amber admitted. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what's right even when you're terrified. Did you learn that from your journalism work? Dominic thought about it. I learned it from watching your mom stay with me through the worst parts of my career. I learned it from seeing you grow into someone who cares about truth and justice. The journalism just gave me tools. You too gave me reasons. Over the following months, the scope of the operation became clearer. The FBI's investigation revealed that over 300 children had been surveilled over the camp's 12-year operation. The buyer network included corporate executives who'd used the information for business leverage, political operatives who'd exploited family connections, and worse, individuals whose purposes Dominic tried not to think about. Hugo Todd's consulting firm was dismantled. Dr. Bessie Wilkins lost her license and faced multiple criminal charges. Dick Jones pleaded guilty to dozens of counts of illegal surveillance and tampered evidence. Patsy Hagen received a reduced sentence in exchange for comprehensive testimony that helped convict the others. Leonard Wall went to trial. The evidence was so overwhelming that it lasted only 3 weeks. Dominic testified, as did Amber. When Amber took the stand, Wall's lawyers tried to paint her as a troubled child who'd misunderstood what she'd seen. But her testimony was clear, detailed, and unshakable. She described finding the surveillance center, the files, the equipment. She explained her reasoning, her actions, her fear. By the time she finished, several jurors were wiping their eyes. Wall was convicted on all counts: conspiracy to exploit minors, illegal surveillance, wire fraud, racketeering, and 24 other charges. His sentencing hearing was brief. The judge, a stern woman named Doreen Casey, looked at Wall with undisguised contempt. "Mr. Wall, you claim your father was wrongly persecuted for his actions. But your response was to create an operation that victimized innocent children. You exploited the most vulnerable people in our society for profit and petty revenge. You deserve no mercy, and you will receive none from this court." Wall received 45 years in federal prison. Hugo Todd got 35. Dr. Wilkins received 20. Dick Jones got 15. Even with good behavior, none of them would see freedom until they were elderly, if at all. Months after the trials, on a crisp fall morning, Dominic sat in his home office editing a documentary. Not about the camp. He'd refused all offers to tell that story commercially, feeling it would exploit the victims further. Instead, he was working on a project about wildlife conservation. Amber knocked on his door. "Dad, there's someone here to see you." Timothy Kane, the police officer who'd been at the camp that first day, stood in the living room. He looked uncomfortable but determined. "Mr. Haynes, I owe you an apology. When I responded to that call at Pine Ridge, I believed Wall's version of events. I helped create an official record that made your daughter look unstable. I should have asked more questions, looked deeper." "You didn't know," Dominic said. "I should have. I've been a cop for 30 years. I should have recognized when something didn't add up. Instead, I let professional courtesy and Wall's reputation blind me." Kane extended his hand. "For what it's worth, what you did, the investigation, the evidence gathering, that was real police work. Better than most of us could have done." Dominic shook his hand. "You can make up for it by being more skeptical next time. When someone's trying too hard to control the narrative, that's when you should look closer." After Kane left, Amber sat with Dominic on the porch. "Do you ever think about Wall's father? About whether you could have handled that story differently?" It was a question Dominic had asked himself countless times over the past months. "I reported the facts as I found them. Edward Wall was corrupt. He took bribes, manipulated his position, hurt people. Those weren't lies or exaggerations. They were true. But I could have reported it with more compassion. I could have acknowledged that he was a person with a family, that his crimes didn't erase every good thing he might have done. I was young, ambitious. I wanted the story to be big. So I made it big, and I didn't think about the collateral damage. Leonard said his dad killed himself because of you. Leonard's dad killed himself because he got caught and couldn't face the consequences. But I could have made those consequences less personally devastating. I learned from that. When I exposed the camp operation, I was careful to focus on the crimes, not on making the criminals into monsters. They did that themselves." Amber was quiet for a moment. "I don't feel bad for Wall, or Todd, or any of them. They hurt kids. They deserve what they got. They do. But they're also human beings who made terrible choices. We can acknowledge that without excusing what they did. That's the difference between justice and revenge. Is that why you didn't go after Wall personally? You could have made it about him specifically, made him the villain of the story. Because that's what he wanted. He wanted this to be about us, him getting revenge on me. But it wasn't about us. It was about the victims, the kids who were exploited. Making it personal would have diminished their suffering." Thanksgiving that year was quiet but meaningful. Maggie's parents came to visit, and Dominic's brother Bruce joined them with his family. They didn't talk about the case much. Everyone was tired of the topic. Instead, they ate too much, watched football, and enjoyed being together. Late that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Dominic found Amber still awake, sitting by the window looking at the stars. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Just thinking. Next summer, I want to go to a different camp. One with a photography program. We can arrange that. Might take some time to find one we all trust. But, Dad, I'm not scared. What happened wasn't about summer camps. It was about specific bad people doing specific bad things. I'm not going to let them ruin something I enjoy. Dominic felt a surge of pride. His daughter had faced something terrible and emerged not broken, but stronger. She understood that evil existed but wasn't universal. She'd learned to be cautious without being paralyzed by fear. You're going to do great things, he told her. With that mind and that courage, you can do anything. I want to be an investigative journalist, Amber said. Like you were. Is that stupid? It's the opposite of stupid. But it's hard. You see terrible things, meet terrible people. It takes a toll. But you also stop terrible things from happening. You help people who can't help themselves. That seems worth it. Dominic sat beside her, looking out at the same stars. Then I'll teach you everything I know. But remember, the goal isn't to destroy people. It's to expose truth. If people destroy themselves with that truth, that's their choice. Our job is just to shine the light. Like we did with the camp. Exactly like we did with the camp. A year later, Pine Ridge Camp was demolished. The property was sold, and the proceeds went to a victim compensation fund. Several families received settlements. Therapy resources were provided to all identified victims, real therapy, from trustworthy professionals. Jen Hoover went back to school, using her experience to pursue a degree in child advocacy. She stayed in touch with Amber, and they developed a friendship based on their shared experience. Patsy Hagen served her reduced sentence at a minimum security facility. She spent her time writing a memoir about her experience, which was published to mixed reviews. Some saw it as self-serving. Others viewed it as a valuable cautionary tale about how good people could be manipulated into evil actions. The Buyer Network investigation continued for years, with periodic arrests making headlines. Hugo Todd's files had documented transactions with over 100 individuals and organizations. Each one faced their own reckoning. Dominic returned to documentary work full-time, but with a renewed sense of purpose. He'd remembered why he'd become a journalist in the first place. Not for awards or recognition, but to tell stories that mattered. He took on projects about social justice, environmental issues, and human rights, always with the same meticulous attention to truth that had defined his career. Amber thrived. She joined her school newspaper, took advanced photography classes, and developed a reputation for asking difficult questions. Her teachers noted her unusual maturity and her ability to see beneath surface narratives. When asked where she learned those skills, she always credited her father. On the 5-year anniversary of the camp's exposure, Dominic received a letter. It was from a woman whose daughter had attended Pine Ridge 7 years earlier, long before Amber's involvement. The woman wrote, "My daughter suffered from anxiety and nightmares for years after her session at the camp. We put her in therapy with Dr. Wilkins, as the camp recommended. The symptoms only worsened. We thought she was broken. After your investigation revealed what really happened, everything made sense. She wasn't broken. She was traumatized by people who were supposed to protect her. With proper therapy, she's finally healing. Thank you for giving her back her life." There were dozens of such letters. Parents thanking him, victims thanking him, people whose lives had been impacted by the exposure of the operation. Dominic kept them all in a folder, reading them when he needed reminder of why the work mattered. Leonard Wall died in prison 8 years into his sentence. Heart attack, the reports said. He was 56. Dominic felt no satisfaction at the news, only a strange sadness for the waste of it all. Wall had spent his adult life seeking revenge for his father's downfall, and in the process had destroyed himself even more completely. Hugo Todd served his full sentence and was released a broken man. He died penniless and alone 3 years later. Dr. Wilkins remained in prison, her earlier prominence as a child psychologist making her a target for other inmates who despised crimes against children. Dick Jones was released after 12 years for good behavior. He moved to another state, changed his name, and lived quietly, working in tech support. He never spoke publicly about his role in the operation. 15 years after that day at Pine Ridge, Amber Haynes published her first major investigative piece. It exposed a network of predatory talent scouts exploiting young athletes. The article was thorough, compassionate, and devastating. It won several awards and resulted in criminal charges against multiple individuals. When interviewed about her work, She spoke about growing up with a father who taught her that truth mattered more than comfort, that some stories needed to be told no matter how difficult. She spoke about learning that justice wasn't about revenge, but about protecting the vulnerable and exposing the corrupt. She never mentioned the camp directly. That story belonged to the victims, not to her. She'd simply been the catalyst for its exposure. Dominic read her article with tears in his eyes. His daughter had become exactly what she'd promised that Thanksgiving night, an investigative journalist who shone light into darkness. She'd learned from his mistakes and built on his successes. She was better than he'd ever been. That evening, the family gathered for dinner. Amber was visiting from the city where she now worked. Maggie had retired from nursing but volunteered at a crisis center. Dominic was finishing what he considered his final documentary, a retrospective on his career. To family, Maggie said, raising her glass. They echoed the toast, clinking glasses. Outside, the sun set over the same house where this had all begun. The world was still full of darkness, still harboring people who did terrible things. But it also contained people who fought that darkness, who refused to accept injustice, who protected the vulnerable. The Haynes family had learned that lesson the hard way, but they'd learned it together, and that made all the difference. Dominic looked at his wife and daughter, feeling content. Leonard Wall had sought to destroy him through the thing he loved most. Instead, Wall had given him something precious, a reminder of what truly mattered, and the opportunity to fight alongside his family for something that was right. In the end, Wall's revenge had failed not because Dominic was stronger or smarter, but because Wall had fundamentally misunderstood what mattered. He'd thought destroying Dominic's reputation or hurting his daughter would constitute victory. But all it had done was remind Dominic of who he was and what he fought for. The real victory wasn't Wall's imprisonment or the exposure of his operation. It was sitting here, years later, with his family intact and his daughter following in his footsteps with more wisdom than he'd had at her age. That was something no revenge plot could touch, no scheme could destroy. It was the one thing Leonard Wall could never understand, that some things were worth more than revenge, worth more than money or power or even justice. Some things were simply worth protecting, no matter the cost. And Dominic Haynes had protected what mattered most. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.